Hello and welcome to the World Business Angels Investment Forum Global Science Technology Innovation Series on Emerging Technology and Cybersecurity. I'm here today with Chuck Brooks, and we're going to talk about adopting a zero-trust innovation approach for emerging technologies, how entrepreneurs enhance threat detection and response. So Chuck, you are an absolute expert in this space. I could never do justice to your CV. So can I get you to introduce yourself to our audience?
Sure. Hi, and thank you for having me. This is Chuck Brooks. I've been involved with the WBAF and very happy to be here. My background is a combination of government and industry. I started out in Chicago, as you can tell here, but I moved to Washington, D.C., where I quickly got involved and served when I was a young kid in Voice of America during the Cold War under President Reagan. Then I moved to the Congress, where I served for almost 10 years doing technology and security issues for the late Senator Alan Specter. And then I was asked to be part of a big startup called the Department of Homeland Security. And I was one of the first few hundred people hired there. I helped set up the Science and Technology Directorate, which reviewed all the new emerging technologies that could be used primarily for counterterrorism and other applications. But then I moved to industry, where I worked in senior executive roles at Xerox, where I was Vice President of Homeland Security, well-known global brand, and also for General Dynamics Mission Systems, where I retired out of, where I was one of their top scouts for cybersecurity technologies. Currently, I teach at Georgetown University in their graduate cybersecurity risk management program. I have my own course called Disruptive Technologies, which coincides with this topic here, which I've been teaching for last 5 years, and I rewrote it because it became outdated so quickly. And I write for Forbes, for Dark Reading, for Homeland Security Today, and I speak often around the world, all over different, just in Farnborough this year, in Dubai, and Rome, which I want to go back to, and a few other places. And so I'm very happy to be here.
Yeah, and Chuck, look, I follow all your writing. Your writing is superb, and
Thank you.
congrats, by the way, on your new book. So Chuck has a new book, a fascinating title, Inside Cyber: How AI, 5G, IoT, and quantum computing will transform privacy and security. So I think that's a fantastic title, and it's really appropriate for our discussion today. But before we get into it, I suppose you've given us a sense of your background, but what was the thinking behind this book?
It really emanated from my class. I'm thinking I'm talking to all my students on these disruptive technologies and cybersecurity frameworks, et cetera. And I'm saying, wait a minute here. This is we're in a new digital age, and it's transforming so fast that we're not prepared. And then you look at what has happened just in the last year with generative AI, how it's exploded everywhere, and it's used for offensive and defensive cyber. And you're looking at 5G now, and the lack of latency now, and information is being shared, and IoT everywhere, devices everywhere, and of course quantum, which everyone thought was in the distant future, but is now around the corner. So all these technologies have such great impact on our digital world and environment we live in. I thought, I need to, why don't I write something that everyone could understand, put these things in clear terms, and tackle, the primary roles of risk management for these technologies, but also, something that dear to the Europeans is the privacy issue, because we're living in a world now where almost nothing is private. And how do we protect such privacy? So the book actually is just being released in 2 weeks, the bookstores all over the world, but it's already available on Amazon, which is good, because everyone is digital now, and it's easier to get it online to go to a bookstore. But I'm an old-fashioned guy. I love going to bookstores and reading.
I did see you a picture with your book, but no, I really
Yeah.
don't do all my books are on my iPad. So, but Chuck, I mean, look, I agree with you, by the way, because look, there's technology and disruptive technologies, they just keep coming at us, and businesses struggle to understand digital disruption, never mind the threat that they cause. Right? So
Yeah.
when you look at all those, I mean, you mentioned, IoT, quantum, 5G, it's really the convergence of all those that changes the dynamic, right? But as they come together, it's clearly creating new risks or new threats, particularly from a cyber perspective. So at a high level, where do you think we're at in all this?
Yeah, well, I think we have a huge challenge ahead of us. Exactly right what you said. It's the fusion of these technologies. When you combine artificial intelligence with the 5G delivery, everything is speed now, and it's speed to mitigate and react too is challenged. So you have a lot of issues you have to contemplate now that you didn't before. Plus, you have the rapid spread of capabilities, particularly with phishing, which is still the number one way that people breach. And now you could automate these phishing. So anyone that's just got any background at all can go to the dark web, get a hacking kit, and then take a generative AI approach and create fakes or deep fakes and voice, video, pictures, and send something to you from your bank or maybe from Amazon or anything that you shop at, and all of a sudden you're compromised. So I think we're living in a very precarious world, and I think businesses particularly, and I say mostly small and medium businesses because they're the least protected, really need to change their attitudes of the digital environment and landscape, because that's where commerce is going, and that's where they need to fortify their defenses and security.
Yeah, and Chuck, I saw the one there. I think it was in Hong Kong where the CFO received what was a phishing email. He was a bit suspicious, and he did what he thought was the right thing. He set up a video conference call with the people to verify. Of course, no one on the call was real, and the money got
Yeah.
transferred. Now, that's at one end, and I think it was something like $25 million. But in terms of the smaller business, and I saw something, someone shared something, I think it was 60 seconds. Is that the program? 60 seconds. They showed two people from an office where they got one person's phone number from the web, and they created a voice call into the office that sounded just like her, saying, I need to book a trip. Can you give me my passport number? Right? And it was so real. And the two of them, the person who supposedly made the call and the person who received the call and gave out the information, the two of them were dumbfounded by this. So if I'm running a business, I'm an entrepreneur, right? How do I protect against this type of development?
Well, you really caught the theme of this podcast, zero trust, right now, right? You cannot really, you have to verify. You have to trust and verify, is a famous saying by Ronald Reagan with arms control. But you can't rely on the fact that it might be real, because anyone could be fooled by a fish, right? Anyone. So there are programs to help detect that, but not everyone has those programs, but they're out there if you need them. But these things are getting so sophisticated and so advanced, so difficult. So you have to look at the URLs, and you still should have all the right things. You should have your firewalls, your routers. You should have multi-factor authentication. First primary cyber hygiene is the first step. So you need to do all that, and then you have to look into. I think if you're a small business, okay, you have to go through basically a zero trust format, which was pushed by the Department of Homeland Security a couple of years ago, or 3 or 4 years ago. And it's really become sort of the flag of most of the federal government now, is that, and it's disseminated because of SolarWinds, where they're probably already in the networks. That's the problem. And how do you discover? So the first thing you need to do is protect your data, right? If you have any key data that you don't want exposed, you segment it and you back it up. So it can't be stolen, and you find yourself in a ransomware attack, which give money and you probably get compromised even more. Then you have to look at who's attached to your network. Who has access, what devices, what people, do they have the right privileges? All that stuff is easy to do, doesn't cost a lot of money. And then you look at basically enforcing your perimeter, your physical protection, implementing policies that your employees must follow. All that stuff can be done for a small business without a lot of expertise. Now, unfortunately, most small businesses and medium businesses don't have any cyber expertise. So I highly recommend that they look at maybe outside and for a managed service, where maybe put their stuff on the cloud and protect it, or come in and do penetration testing. But it really is going to necessitate that in the future, because we're getting so, the complexity is so bad out there with the threats that, I think you really need outside help almost forever going forward.
So, Chuck, just two things I wanted to pick up on. One is zero trust, what we mean by zero trust. And second is, at the end of the day, this is all about humans, because the technology does what the technology does. But, everything I've seen, it's, somewhere in the human chain that we do something that we're not supposed to do. So I like this phrase, the human cyber cultural wall, right? So maybe can you tell us exactly what you mean by zero trust? And then the role of humans, because we're human ourselves. We have people in our businesses. We're the ones that fall for the phishing or do something that we shouldn't do. So maybe pull those two together for me.
Sure. Well, you're right. Human trust. Humans are still the most vulnerable. Technology are tools that can be used for and against us, and so understanding those tools and how to orchestrate them are one aspect. but also knowing what humans in the loop have the administrative responsibilities and capabilities to protect you, and if they're doing their job is also an imperative. And when you're talking about zero trust, I mean, the first thing really is discover the vulnerabilities in your network. Second thing is mitigate those vulnerabilities, and then verify, institute a policy of verification that, we were just talking about deep fakes. What is real is real. So this person is the person they're saying they are, or this device really is that device. And then you have to enforce it. You have to continually enforce it because you're continually your communications, you're expanding, you're adding applications all the time. You need to authenticate those applications. You got to put in policies of protect the data for encryption, data loss protection, etc. And so all those elements are really key. And if unless you do those, you're going to be at a disadvantage. But again, it's not really expensive. It's just really knowing what to do. And you could go to there's a lot of resources out there. NIST puts out industry resources for security frameworks that are free. Department of Commerce is NIST in the United States, and they have a whole catalog of them. So if you're in the manufacturing industry or health, they're different protocols to follow. And so it's really industry specific. And also I know that EU has, I think it's ERISA, does a lot of good stuff too with these kind of frameworks to follow. So I think the information is out there. It's a question of really learning it and then using it. And again, most businesses don't tend to look for it or use it.
Yeah, and I suppose, look, part of the issue as I see it, Chuck, is, we tend to think, oh, cyber, that's IT, that's over there somewhere. But actually it's all of us, right? Because, we're the ones using the
Yes.
systems, the tools, talking to the system, doing whatever it might be. And you mentioned connectivity and speed. So, I mean, as I understand it, the internet is predominantly now being accessed by mobile phones. All those mobile phones are now going to be, AI empowered, et cetera, et cetera. So as businesses are trying to respond to, the changing dynamics, and we're sort of saying, oh, we need to be out there. It used to be, oh, we need a web page, then we need a mobile app. Actually, we're going to need multimodal capability to be able to interact with customers or whatever it might be, right? How do we make sure that we're thinking about cyber from the outset, as opposed to when something's gone wrong or when it's out there and we're sort of, oh, we haven't thought about cyber? How do we start thinking that way, or what do we need to change?
Well, it is Cybersecurity Awareness Month, so it's a good point to put that. I think the first thing is the awareness. A lot of businesses just sort of say, well, it's not going to be me, I'm obscure. But in a digital world, no one's obscure. And
Yeah.
and I think that what they really need to look at is really change the paradigm of thinking. Particularly if you're looking at any organization, there's a leadership, the C-suite, if it's the CEO, the CTO, the CFO, and the VPs or whatever are involved, marketing, sales, legal. What has been left out for the most part is the Chief Information Security Officer, the person responsible for the cyber. And this is what's got to change. I think that the cybersecurity expertise needs to be added to the board, no matter what, because it's not a cost item anymore. It's a survival item for companies. And if they're not that naive to think that they're going to survive if they're breached or as a small and medium business by a ransomware attack, and everything's going to be business as normal, and they have no incident response and no resilience plan, they're going to be in big trouble. They'll probably go out of business. 50% of them do. So I think this whole attitude has to change, and the more programs like this where we discuss it and promote it, the better, because I think people are just starting to wake up, and it's particularly the older generation, us, that we remember when there was no internet, when there's no phones, and
No
now people are
connectivity.
growing up with them. Yeah. I mean, now you're if you have a kid, they grow up with their phone is part of them.
Oh, they're born with it.
Attached to them, attached to the hip, literally. They don't leave it. Everything in their identity is on that. They measure their popularity by the likes, and they're also less security conscious, which is a real problem. So it's a lot of it's educating the younger generation, because they don't understand the implications of privacy back then. They think, I can do it, say whatever I want, but it appears later in the internet. And then until they're really in the work world, it's sometimes too late. So I think we really have to start early with this education, at the earlier, even kindergarten, because kids are already doing with iPads in first, second grade. So it's a real, I guess, education issue of our time. We have to basically transform from basically a physical commercial network, of Industry 3.0 to the Industry 4.0, where we're merged with the physical and the digital, and we really need to do this on a global basis because it's going to get really dangerous if we don't.
Yeah, I mean, Chuck, that's a fascinating statistic. 50% of those small businesses will go out of business if they're
Yes, yeah,
because you think about it, like if something goes wrong, I mean, the rest of the agenda is out the window because all your time is now trying to deal with this problem. And if you're in a regulated industry, you have a regulator, want to, if it's in Europe, for sure, you're going to have a data protection
yes.
officer on your door. So this is so important. This is not something that we sort of say, oh yeah, we must get to cybersecurity. This is actually fundamental to actually running a business in the digital economy. Is that fair?
It's really fair, and I think we need to do more. And maybe when you get a business license, you have to show some cybersecurity expertise. They do that with vendors now in government, where they're going to promote a thing called CMMC, where you have to get some expertise and cyber approve it before you can actually be a vendor. And in Europe, of course, I mean, there's a lot of, like you say, data protection laws, but maybe you have to have an understanding of those laws before you open a business. Every country is different, and I think we really need to institute it from the top down because otherwise people are going to ignore it. It's a tendency just not to spend enough time and think about it, and it's just the way it is. I mean, basically, organized crime, although it exists still in the physical and the trafficking and stuff, it's still the drugs. It's heavily involved with the digital and the dark web now, and really, we're looking at with the biggest threats. The biggest threats are obviously our safety and crime, and then also state-sponsored attacks, which are going against critical infrastructure and businesses. And in fact, North Korea runs its economy on ransomware stolen, largely from attacks and ransomware on the healthcare communities and others around the world. So we have to look at the realities now of the environment we're in and adapt to them.
So Chuck, in the digital economy, I suppose one of the big changes is, we've moved to sort of an ecosystem, platform-driven type economy. So I no longer need to own everything to be successful as a business, which brings me to the ecosystem. And you talked about your chain. So I might be a business, and I'm thinking, oh yeah, I'm pretty good around my cyber whatever. But actually, I have all these partners, right, who are my value chain or parts of my value chain. So I probably need to start rethinking that relationship as well. So is
Yeah.
that back to zero trust? And how would I even know where to start?
Well, again, there's actually good supply chain NIST recommendations for that, but you're exactly right. One of the biggest vulnerabilities right now is supply chain. And the U.S. learned that a few years ago with some of the vendors that were compromised by foreign actors, and went to institute some really interesting protocols to make sure that you have a visibility into all your partners, and you can mandate as if you're running a contract that each vendor must prove that they're using encryption, et cetera, that the data, who has access to it up front, because you're responsible for it. If you're the prime and something gets compromised, it doesn't matter that it might be someone down the line in the chain of small business. You're the one that's responsible and held accountable. So I think that supply chain is really important. A lot of this can be done now with the cloud too, where you move a lot of your information into a hybrid cloud where it's being protected, encrypted in one general area. There are a lot of variables you can do with that, but you're right. Supply chain is an extreme vulnerability because it exists in every single industry, particularly in manufacturing and in healthcare. But
Yeah,
it's a real problem.
and I think certainly from some of the stuff I read in the past, quite often the attack actually comes through a supply chain partner that's connected to your system in some shape or form. So you might be doing all the right things, but someone in your chain may not.
Yeah, exactly right, and that's usually the case. They're good. What it is that the hackers, the bad guys, are going to look for the easiest gap or lowest hanging fruit of vulnerability, and often they know it's the supply chain. They'll look at the contract, they'll look who the vendors are, and they'll see there's a one or two mom and pop shop out there, and they'll go for that. They say, oh, we can get in through there. They're always looking for the way in, and now with AI assisted research and stuff, they can find it easier too. So
Yeah.
right, you really need to really know that when you're dealing with your partners and your vendors and any company right now, that you're on follow the same protocols and have visibility into at least what they're giving you, and maybe establish some sort of a priority of encryption and backup and resilience if you do get hacked.
You mentioned AI, and I know you covered it in your book, but are you in the camp that AI actually will help with security, or it's actually going to be such a nightmare for security, or are you actually, it can be both, but it depends on what way you go about it?
Yeah, well, it can be both, no doubt about it. Every tool can be used two ways, right? And even any tool used for cybersecurity, because you figure that a lot of companies have up to 35 tools, but they really do is just create more vulnerabilities, because
Mm.
they don't orchestrate all the time together. But with AI, it does have some immediate applications right now in threat intelligence. Very good for that. You could immediately analyze and recognize anomalies and help you with false positives, and you're really talking more about sophisticated operation where you have a security operations center and look at that. Also helps them write reports instead of spending hours writing reports. That kind of stuff's really good. And then there's stuff with also with autocorrect encoding, etc. for misconfigurations. All that stuff is really important, I think. The problem is, of course, that the bad guys are already using it for basically automating phishing attacks. Basically masking a lot of their malware, etc. And also finding the vulnerabilities. So again, it's a two-way street. But I think if you don't know what you're doing, it can be a problem. If you're just say, oh, I'm going to get this or this and this. I think you have to have a strategy and a framework and expertise, some expertise, before you enter in the AI realm. Right now, it's really mostly machine learning capabilities has been around for a long time, but it's really the computing capabilities and the speeds have changed. And now with generative AI, we're just learning what could be with these large language models with AI, and we don't even know. I mean, the experts don't even know what's happening. Google is saying it may be able to reason now. We never thought that'd be a possibility.
Well, the one thing for sure is, and we've seen it already, I believe, I've certainly seen it, the plishing, back to our plishing, the emails and the other things that will come in, they are so authentic looking now. If it's from Chuck, this sounds like the way Chuck writes. I mean,
Yes.
the technology is going to be used to fool us. So we need to be, zero trust on steroids, probably, but it is going to be used in a way that, things will look a lot more real than in the past. You might say, oh, well, that's definitely dodgy. Just, I don't even have to read it. I know it's dodgy. But that's probably going to disappear because it's going to be so well crafted.
I think it already has. I actually did a test on myself with when ChatGPT came out and it said, how would Chuck Brooks describe this issue in cybersecurity? And basically went through the net, took all my articles and wrote something in the person how I would write.
Wow.
So I mean that's really right. So you can think about that with identity theft. How you could
Yeah.
basically take and it's not just what they write now, it's conversations. They can look at the social media or the posts, the kind of things they like. It really is just taking and taking the marketing, or we've already been doing with marketing, where they were able to thankfully Europe has more stringent laws than we do, but they basically know everything about you, how you shop, where you go, who your family is, what your preferences and anything is. So these huge marketing companies are taking advantage of that already, but the
Yeah.
bad guys too are doing this now more and more. And as you said, with these deep fakes, they could emulate anything. And so again, this whole what is real and what is not as real.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
and
yeah. Well, didn't Warren Buffett receive a deep fake video of himself that was so convincing? He said his whole family would have been taken by it.
it's really tough. I mean, there are some programs now I think that have come out that help detect video deepfakes and audio deepfakes. But again, I mean, I think the capabilities of the adversaries are getting so strong on that. It's very difficult to do. And plus, most people don't take the time to look at to buy counter programs, stuff to do this. They'll just say, "Why bother? I'm just going to go through my social media or whatever." But
Yeah.
so no, I think we live in a world that's it's an information world that is also filled with misinformation and filled with threats that we don't necessarily recognize anymore.
Yeah, and as much as we're investing, the bad actors are also investing in this capability. So we can't lose sight of that. You mentioned quantum being around the corner. Now, look, I am no expert on quantum, but I understand where they're trying to get with it, and I have seen some stuff on it. But the big talk is, oh, it's going to decrypt everything. Right?
Yeah.
So there's no such thing as security in a quantum world. Now, equally I read, oh no, there's loads of people taking steps to make sure that their quantum won't destruct their encryption, all this. So is quantum a big threat? And is that something businesses need to be thinking about?
I think everyone needs to be thinking about it because it's already here in some forms. Quantum photonics, quantum computing is already there. The photonics are different, than the qubits and the other things when you're looking at these, really molecularly structured quantum computers that Google and D-Wave and others have been working on. But if you look at what's out there already, they're quantum algorithms. There are already quantum number generators. There's a lot of tools that are in the early stages that are quantum technologies, and quantum entanglement was just demonstrated at CERN. So, and the Chinese have made quantum communication proofs recently with satellites. So it is here. Now, going to what you're really referring to as Q Day, when one nation gets control and they're able to decrypt everything, that's a race between the West and probably mostly China. But I think we're working on it. But I think also everything is not, we're mandating quantum resistant algorithms now for contracts with the U.S. federal government. We're looking ahead to that's already in there. And I think not everything is quantum capable to do it. What it would do, it would obviously the speed of an analytics would be incredible. And then you combine it with artificial intelligence and you have basically a superpower. So that's where it is. Going back to your fusion thought earlier, that's where the real threat is. But so in a nutshell, I mean, it is something to worry about. But I think that we're going to have other options, and I don't think all the data is going to be done. But problem is, Chinese have already stolen a lot of the data and IP and patents, etc., that they haven't been able to decrypt yet. And when they do, they'll use it. So that is a worry.
So, Chuck, I suppose the question for me is that, if I'm a blue chip organization or government, I have resources to invest in this, right? If I'm an entrepreneur or a scale up business, right? Is this a case of just hope for the best, or how should I be thinking about this in terms of my business today, tomorrow, and into the future?
Well, first of all, I mean, as we said earlier, cybersecurity's got to be a priority, and then look at, really what my book's about. Look at how these technologies may impact them personally. Artificial intelligence already is, right? It's hitting every consumer. Every consumer's out there fooling around with generative AI already. But quantum's close. 5G is in a lot of part of the world. There'll be 6G soon. IoT is everywhere. So it's not that these things are science fiction or future off in the future. They're here. So I think that the imperative for industry is to have a deeper understanding of the impact of emerging technologies on their productivity and operations as a business, but also on the threat for security. And it really requires a new way of thinking and a new priority. They're used to doing business as usual, but it's not business as usual. COVID-19, transformed that economy quicker than we thought it would. We all were working at remote and doing these things, but now we're even more of a digital economy and more dependent on these networks and information to operate in almost every industry possible.
So just on COVID, I mean, look, COVID, you're right. It totally transformed the way the work. I mean, can you imagine going into a boardroom 4 years ago and saying, I have a great idea, 90% of the workforce could work from home, right? But we ended up there. And I know there's all this ongoing debate in terms of, well, what's the right mix going forward and that sort of stuff. But that was it wasn't digital transformation, but it was a change in terms of where people were connecting to the organization. They were still doing the same work in my mind, but they were connected in a different way. We weren't ready for that. And I'm just wondering, is there a hangover out there? Or have we actually adopted and no, we're really getting our minds around this, and it's okay. We can have our people work from anywhere.
I think that's basically a business specific decision. I think if you talk to people, I think the hybrid is sort of the compromise model that works well, because I think you need socialization with your employees and the people, your coworkers, which is important. People to people. We can't always be digital. But I do think that for some work, particularly things with doing legal and accounting, that they get more productivity working remote. I mean, there's no distractions. They're working on basically linear things. So I think it's a mix, and I think it's obviously it's easier now for when you see the students, the way they operate basically on their computers and their phones, is a part of themselves, that
Yeah.
to adapt to that kind of environment. I think for the more of the older workers, we're used to the old, you know, let's commute and do stuff. That's another thing. It cuts commute time. So if you're looking at productivity in some cities, it takes an hour just to go and to work and back from work. So those 2 hours could be used better. But I think there's it's a mix. It's not black and white.
But Chuck, it's, I mean, look, you travel quite a bit. You go into an airport, everyone is on their phone, their laptop, their whatever, right? You get on a train, it's the same, right? You go to a hotel lobby, it's the same.
Yeah.
And look, there is an ad on our television station here in Ireland where the lady goes up to the barista and says, "What's the password for the Wi-Fi?" And he says, "It's Hack Me," right? So
Right.
they're just trying to get this message across, but everyone is connecting from everywhere, and they're all using. A lot of people are using public Wi-Fi, all that sort of stuff, right? So when we come back to zero trust, right? How have we just thrown zero trust out the window?
You have, if you're going to a Starbucks or a cafe and you're opening your thing, you don't have a VPN or something to protect you. But and particularly these airport networks are very vulnerable. You always wonder who's hanging around them or who's connected to them. But they're looking for opportunities, and again, they're not always just your hacktivists. These are people that are state sponsored or organized criminals. So I think you can't underestimate the vulnerabilities of a public Wi-Fi system. Hotels are really big targets because you usually have your financial information with the hotel and other places in the rooms and privacy and stuff, And so all these, the hospitality industry, all these now are really, basically you better be careful. And so, I mean, I definitely recommend, masking your address, your IP address, using a VPN or doing something if you're going to take that. Because again, I understand human nature. You always want to be connected, right? Exactly what you said. You're at a restaurant, people are talking on the phone, anywhere you're on the phone. And it's just, you're not going to change that, right? So you have to adapt to the behaviors, and just hopefully they use more security when they follow those protocols.
So Chuck, I'm always amused though in terms of when I look at boards of directors, the word digital scares them. I look at executives, the word digital scares them, and I look at business owners and they're kind of, oh, the word digital, and it's kind of, oh, we know we need technology, but it's not something, it's not really what I'm about. I have this great idea, and so how do we actually remove this from some sort of technical challenge to reframe it actually as a business challenge, business necessity, but in a way that is something people want to relate to and can relate to and find it easy to relate to.
Yeah, I mean, I think really, if you address them like they were the consumer, they'd understand. They're on their phone, they're doing their research, they're surfing the web, they're ordering off of Amazon or their food or whatever they're doing. But then when they go to business and say, well, digital is, it's not me, I don't understand that. But then you look at the same thing and say everything that applies to the person, the consumer, applies in a business. And everything on a business now is connected to a website or whatever we're doing, and saying, shouldn't we have more security there? And it's an easier discussion. But again, I think it needs to really be mandated by a lot of governments, because I think, as a requirement to get certain licenses or business, whatever licenses. So because otherwise people just tend to be lax. And
Right.
you said you hit a thing right there. It's always human nature tends to be lax generally. We always drop our guard. Not always our fault. Everyone is vulnerable, but you can make yourself less of a target. And businesses really need to change the paradigm, because it can't exist going into what you're just referring to, the digital transformation, without understanding the implications of being digitally connected and doing digital commerce.
Mm.
So I think, and it's not just that you're going to get hacked and you're going to be held for ransomware. It's reputational. If you're
Yeah.
a company and all of a sudden they can't trust you, or your data is now exposed, you're less likely to keep that customer. And all these things factor in the business element. And again, going back to what I said earlier, it's really not a cost issue now. It's a survivability and viability issue for business going forward, to understand that digital operations need to have involved in security and awareness.
And Chuck, if we flip that for a moment, so I'm a business, I'm trying to scale, and I'm looking to get funding, I'm looking to get bank loans, I'm looking for this, that, and the other. Do you see the day coming where your would-be investors or financiers are going to say, "No, hang on, before we do anything, we want to see your zero trust approach to cybersecurity"? Do you
Well,
see?
I think it's a good idea. I haven't seen it, but I think probably some VC are looking at, particularly the ones that are involved in tech and AI and cyber, which is a good percentage of them with these billion-dollar valuations. But I haven't seen that. But yet, right, for bank giving out a loan, I mean, it makes sense for a small business. Okay, like we're talking about with the Pentagon instituting CMMC. Do you have these requirements before we risk our money on you? And I
Mm,
think, again, that's something that maybe needs to be instituted on a grander scale. And again, it's a new way of thinking, and it's difficult to make changes that quick. But it's a process, and cybersecurity awareness is one way to do it.
yeah, yeah. So Chuck, I've heard people say in the past there's two types of businesses: those who've been hacked and those who don't know they've been hacked, right? So let's assume we don't know we were hacked, and we're hoping we haven't been hacked. Right? But is that realistic? I mean, you know, we can be as diligent as we want to be, or as could be. We can do the awareness training for ourselves and our people, etc. Um, but does the threat really go away, or is this something that we need to just keep working on all the time?
And we need to keep working on it all the time because the threats become more sophisticated, and it's always constant monitoring. And but what you said is true. But if you're a good analogy, if you're walking in a dangerous neighborhood, you're likely to get mugged. Whether you're working in a safe neighborhood, we can make our environment safer.
Right.
And true, there's always a chance that you may get hacked or breached or something may happen, but the odds go down. And and if you do get hacked, I think and it's prudent for, I think, any business to have an incident response plan and resilience plan in place, because they should anyway. They do it for other things. If something happens with the stock market or whatever, but you need to really look at that. Assuming you get hacked, who's responsible? Who's the spokesperson? What is the IT shop's role? If you're a public company, what do you need to do, et cetera? All these things need to be looked at, and then you have to have a rehearsal of that too. Again, practice it, but
No, and actually, that's a really fascinating point because I was involved in a program with the Irish Management Institute here where we actually did a cyber simulation attack. Right? Now, it was all just it was a guy on a screen and he was basically saying, "I have a call coming through from a production manager here. I have a call coming through from a press officer here," and someone was on point and they had to get different people to take the calls. Right? And it was scary, even though it was totally
yeah.
artificial. It was scary, right? So you get a call that, well, he puts someone gets nominated to take the call from a journalist, and I want to talk to you about the cyber attack. Sorry, what are you talking about? Oh, you're not aware of it? I'm just looking at all your data here on the dark web. I mean,
Oh, yeah.
it was. I have to say, it was the most revealing exercise I've probably been on in a while. But how many businesses actually prepare for that? Because the problem is when it happens, and if you don't know what you're going to do, you don't have a playbook, you haven't thought about it, right? I mean, who's prepared for this?
Very few. I think there's some large, the financial community has spent more time on this and investment. So a lot of banks, even though they get hacked often too, but they've looked at ways to to sort of obviate the threat and pass on the cost usually to the consumers. But they're much more layered in understanding and have a game plan and rehearsal from their cybersecurity shops. But if you're talking about the general public and you're talking about general business, I would say less than 5% really have any kind of incident response plan in place and practice and resilience, and even gamification or even tabletops going for this kind of thing. But they should.
They should. That's a new course for you to run. So speaking of your course, so what are the issues that the people on your course, what are the typical things that they struggle with, or that you're sort of seeing as there's some common trends, and you probably picked some of this up in your book, but there must be some things that you're sort of saying, here we go again, tick tick tick.
Yeah. Well, I think that the biggest thing is that people they look at a topic or an issue and they forget it, that to use the risk management framework. And I think they have to have a strategy and an outline of what to do. And this comes with every emerging technology, and it comes with every business, really.
Yeah.
Your security is physical too. It's not just that; it's the data, the apps, the network, the perimeters, everything on there, and your policies and your governance. So most people they'll look at, come in, they'll look at things. We're in a narrow tunnel, maybe from a technical perspective, and that's okay to understand the implications of the coding and the configurations and all that too. But you really need to have, in this day and age, you need to have soft skills too, and that's what I'm impressing on this is critical thinking with my students, to have the soft skills to be able to communicate it. Problems in the past has always been the IT shops could not communicate to anybody, and that's always, it's still going a problem with a lot. But CISO or someone involved in cybersecurity needs to be able to talk to the C-suite. They need to understand the reputational governance issues. They need to understand the tools out there, the regulations by government. There's so much more to it, and having the ability and these soft skills to understand it, communicate, and organize around it I think are really important.
Yeah, and I was going to ask you about the skills that entrepreneurs, business people, startups, scale ups, etc., need to be thinking about, because clearly awareness is one, and you're sort of saying have that zero trust awareness, soft skills, being able to talk about these, communicate, etc. What else should they be doing, or could they be doing, to give their business the best chance of staying the right side of the cyber threat?
Well, I think there's several ways. I mean, I think if they're a small or medium business, certainly consider going to the cloud, looking at an Amazon, Google, IBM, or whatever, to help protect you, because you probably don't have the expertise on premises to do that. If you're a board, even a small business, look at bringing on some cybersecurity expert as part of your board or advisor. That's always a good thing to do too. And then the thing is, I think that every business really needs to practice cyber hygiene, and that's really institute policies for multi-factor authentication, which is the first way in for most automated programs, and you can help stop that. Strong passwords, make sure you have routers and everything else, strong firewalls, etc. All that stuff's are basics for cyber hygiene. So I think you could do that, and then also identity access management. I mean, who has what access to your data, and who's controlling the network within your company, and that person has to be a trusted and an expert person. And if you can't do any of that, you can always bring in a managed service from the outside to do it. But you really need to look at this in this realm we're in, because there's just too many gaps and vulnerabilities and too many ways in for the bad guys. And it's very difficult for any company, let alone a small and medium business, to be able to fortify everything. But if you just do the basics, you at least make yourself less of a target.
Yeah, and I think in there, Chuck, if I hear you right, you're sort of saying your data. I mean, like, businesses think about what are their assets, and they might probably think of different things. They don't necessarily think about, actually, our biggest asset is our data. Our biggest vulnerability is our data privacy, or loss of our data privacy on behalf of our customers, etc. So we probably need to redefine what is important in the digital world within our business, and what are our digital assets, so that we can start to redefine how actually we're going to go about protecting them.
Absolutely. And that's the first step in a risk management program, is what you want to protect and defend. Well, actually, it's really discovering what you have, and then what you want to protect. And then you really do it. And then you verify everything that is there, that and authenticate it, that should be there. And then you go about instituting a risk management plan around that. But you hit really the initial point, right? So I think that's exactly where to start.
Yeah, so this has been fantastic. I am conscious of time. I'm sure there's going to be another book in you on this, because
Yes, definitely
technology
soon.
just keeps coming. But any final thoughts that you might want to share with our members? They're all over the world. They're people who are trying to do great things. Any final thoughts that you can share?
Yeah, I think, speak with the WBAF. I mean, it really is a lot about entrepreneurship, and entrepreneurship. I think an integral part about it is knowing the ecosystem, and the ecosystem requires security. So I think whether you're making an investment or whether you're a startup, building an interesting practice or business, you need to look up front from where the security challenges are, particularly in the digital world. And then you look at also, all the other aspects of business is part of that. So it should be a part of your plan, your business plan. It should be a part of your operational plan too. And the final thing I think is that, again, it's all about, staying vigilant, staying safe, recognizing that new threats are coming on every day, and trying to keep yourself as protected as you can. And again, no one's infallible, but everyone can make themselves less of a target, and that's what you should try to do.
Chuck, thank you so much. On behalf of the World Business Angels Investment Forum, thank you so much for your time today. It's been a fantastic discussion.
It's been my pleasure, and thank you.
That was